Welcome to the Museum of American Finance. I'm David Cowan. I'm the president. I'm joined tonight by the chairman of the board, Professor Richard Silla, in the front row. And tonight's topic is money, or really finance. And what better place to discuss finance than a finance museum? Finance has really not been in favor since the credit crisis, and it's almost under attack daily by some of our politicians that are running for office. And tonight we're going to hear from someone who's got an opinion about finance and what it's done, and he has studied it throughout time. William Goetzmann is the Edwin J. Beinecke Professor of Finance and Management and Director of the International Center for Finance at the Yale School of Management. To his credit, his books include The Origin of Value, the financial innovations that created the modern financial markets. This is a great book. The Professor Silla has actually a chapter in about the origins of the New York Stock Exchange, and the second book of his, The Growth Mirror, The Great Mirror of Folly, Finance Culture, and the Crash of 1720. The professor would be happy to autograph a book for you afterwards. It's my pleasure to introduce William Goetzmann.
Well, thanks for that kind introduction. This is a fabulous place to be talking about this. A lot of what I've learned about finance has come from looking at old certificates and old contracts, and very much focused on the empirical documentary side of finance. So the notion that this museum has grown into such a fabulous space and has an amazing collection is a thrill to me. This is a book that I've worked on over the course of 25 years, and I wasn't working straight through. I was working on ideas that interested me in finance. I'm a finance professor with a sort of minor in history, and every time I would be confronted with a financial theory or a financial institution, my natural question was, where did it come from? Why did it develop? And how did it develop? And what did it mean when it did? So this book is sort of a product of a series of explorations, some of them resulting in academic research and articles and discoveries, and some of them just taking a step back and reflecting on what is the role that finance plays in society. The thesis of the book is very simple. The idea is that finance is a technology. So it's a tool that can be used just like any other tool. It can be used for good or for ill, and that it plays a very special role in civilization. So, and I'll show you some examples of this in a bit, but the technology of finance is focused on a few, actually it really is focused on one thing. It's a time tool. It's a tool that moves money backwards and forwards through time. So I put some themes of the book up here, and I'm not going to be able to talk about all of them. The book is really long, and it's fairly thick. It scares people off a bit, but once you start to read in it, I hope that you'll enjoy it, even if you're not somebody that's focused on finance. It's much more of a history book than a finance book. But in the book, it starts with the notion that the first financiers, or the first people thinking about finance, were trying to create contracts that passed value back and forth through time. And then all of these other things have been a consequence of that. The notion that it's focused on civilization, the idea there is that civilization is a really complicated structure, and with the kind of complications that come with people living in cities and reaching out around the world and creating complex institutions, you need a tool that allows you to do things like smooth out shocks to the environment and allows you to parse different kinds of payoffs to people in a way that you wish you could live without. And sometimes today in modern political discourse, it looks like people wish they could live without all of the financiers, but you really can't, and you couldn't even from the very beginning of recorded history. So this is a small document. It's a loan. It's a silver loan, and I can't read the cuneiform, but I've had it read for me. As a matter of fact, I had it read for me by a man who comes every year from. He comes from Jerusalem, where he's a monk. He stays in Yale all summer long, and he reads these documents, and he deciphers them. So I slipped in one of my documents, and he was willing to do it. But it's a loan from about 1650 BC. And by that time, people were using silver as a unit of account. Even if they were not necessarily paying in silver, they would denominate their obligations in silver. So the whole idea of a loan goes back really far. As a matter of fact, the most interesting thing about finance is that the first financial contracts were the reason why written language was invented. So you sort of think, what caused people to invent the alphabet or invent writing? And it must be some move to communicate to the world. But really, it started as an accounting system in Mesopotamia to make sure that people were paying their taxes on time, and a series of obligations were set up where the city would say, you owe X amount of grain. You got to deliver X amount of grain, and we're going to have a system to record to make sure you pay it. This is one of the most amazing documents in the whole book, and so this thing is about the size of a pineapple, and it's made of clay. And you can see it's a little different from the other one that I showed you before. It's a Sumerian document, and it's about 2600 BC, so almost 5,000 years old. And what you can see is it's got little boxes and writing in the boxes, so it's almost back to the time when they were writing with pictographs. And it's a reparations contract. It's a reparations document. Two cities were fighting with each other. Umma and Lagash are the names of these two Sumerian cities. And one of them took back a piece of land that was a very fertile piece of land that it had for, 80 years or so. And when it took the land back, it said, you owe us not just the land that we had lost, but you owe us all of the back, you have to pay us all the back taxes and interest on those taxes. So interest rates were 33.33%. So imagine 33.33%, 80 years. That's really a big number, okay? And so now I'm going to show you a little bit about how to read some Sumerian. I can't read any, but I'll show you one part that's kind of interesting. So here's this big thing. It was created, by the way. The design is as if the design is a kind of a net, and so these lines are kind of representing the fabric of a net. And the idea is, I've trapped you. We've trapped you. But down here, you'll see these three little holes. Okay, those are the holes for a number that's about $3 trillion, 3 trillion, okay? And the Sumerians used base 60, and the way that they made those marks was they took something about the size of a pencil, and they pushed this in, and then inside those round holes, they pushed another smaller hole inside there, which was exponentiation. So these things are really kind of a complicated way of representing a huge number. So you think about the mathematical invention that had to happen by 5,000 years ago. This document not only represents the idea that you can enumerate things, but you could make up a number that's far beyond anything that really existed. This was the amount of grain that they had to pay back was some multiple of the amount of grain that is actually grown every year in the United States. On top of that, the calculation that was done was a complicated compounding interest calculation. So this is the very first document that has compound interest in it, and it tells you that the argument for reparations was based upon the common acceptance that a financial contract was a valid contract, and that you could extract interest from people. So this thing has got a lot of modern finance and sophisticated mathematics and conceptual notion of very large numbers all together.